Hi, I'm Ben Simon, music director of the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra, and today we're talking with composer Jessica Hunt, who has recently written a piece that the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra will premiere on our upcoming main stage programs over the weekend of February 25, 26, 27. Jessica is affiliated with the Gabrielle Elena Frank Creative Academy of Music, and here is my recent conversation with Jessica. Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Hi, Ben. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Well is very good in these days, Jessica. I'm
Yeah,
glad to see that.
I'm
Where are
grateful
you
for it.
zooming from?
I'm zooming from Baltimore at the moment.
Okay.
I'm at the Peabody Institute. I'm an assistant professor of music theory there, going into my third year.
Fantastic. Music theory. And do you get to teach composition as well?
Oh, I always slide it into my music theory classes. Always, always, but no lessons, mostly classroom teaching.
Jessica, how did you get involved with Gabrielle Elena Frank's Creative Academy of Music? Tell us a little about your background there.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I was at the University of Michigan at the time. I was working on my doctorate there, studying with Christy Custer. And in my lesson I can't remember what month or day it would have been, but Christy mentioned to me that this academy was forming and, she knew Gabby and that it would be, really worthwhile. And I was like, wait, I know that name. I think I have one of her CDs. Oh my goodness. So I applied for the academy. And was in some ways sort of off center from the application process because it wasn't asking, what awards do you have and where are the fancy places that you've worked and been performed. It was, who are you? And I had never before encountered an application process that really seemed to have a point of connecting with me as a human being and an artist rather than just a producer of work. Um, and from there, I found out that I had gotten in. She called me herself, and I said, "I'm on the phone with Gabrielle Elena Frank. Oh my goodness!" And it just truly began to change my life from that day forward. We had a Zoom call before the sort of gathering of folks out in her amazing home in Boonville, California, and she just radiated this love of what she was doing, and that was just so infectious, in the good way. I feel like that word has a very different connotation these days than it used to have.
Infectious,
um,
that's true, yes.
yeah. But just being out in her just absolutely beautiful space that is so connected with nature, and being there with her dogs and her husband Jeremy and her chickens and all of this, and the wonderful musicians who were also chosen as composer fellows and performer fellows. And um, there was something very different in that nothing about the premise was about just that piece. Every ounce of what was being discussed in the long conversations and in the in-between moments was about developing as an artist and as a person, not just what's going to make that piece better. And that just, it really did change my life. Gabby gave me the advice that it was okay to like what you're doing, which for a lot of living composers, especially composers who have any sort of demographic obstacles kind of baked into what they're doing, it's very hard to, or very easy to lose sight of the fact that it's okay to enjoy your art. And so I know that sounds a little silly in some ways, but it just, I remember very vividly after that conversation sitting at the keyboard, and there was a light bulb moment, and I started writing music that I liked instead of the music that I thought I was supposed to be writing for the
Mm.
people who were gonna, let me into the right places to do the right career moves. And you know, once I really embraced that, and it's kind of a two steps forward, one step back. We're getting there over time, and I get to be more kind of authentically myself with every piece. Um, but it's just everything that has happened for my art that's been, for the good and for the exciting, has been because of that shift. And I know I wouldn't be doing and enjoying my work the way I am now without Gabby.
That's absolutely wonderful. So, the piece you wrote for the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra is called Heat,
Yes.
and you write in your notes that it's part of a set of works in the inaugural cycle of the Composing Earth series. So if you could talk maybe about that series and tell us a little about what to expect with Heat, Jessica.
Absolutely. Gabby's very into environmental ethics and responsibility. And she had started posting on Facebook about flying less and other kinds of major issues that affect our industry, especially. Um, and it seemed like something might be bubbling behind the scenes. And she had reached out to me eventually after some of this had percolated to tell me her plan for this group and to invite me to join. Her vision was that 10 living composers who were all alumni of her program, so, understand her ethos and our sort of collaborative community mindset. And her plan was to have us learn the science, the actual data, so that as artists, we wouldn't just be saying, it's good to save the planet, and no actual specifics to really be able to back it up. And so we had this pretty intense syllabus of materials, books and documentaries, and really sort of going through, in some ways, an almost traumatizing experience to suddenly be investing so much time and energy into really understanding what is behind our climate emergency and coming to terms with the fact that this is a human-led situation and a human-caused situation, and we are the ones who will have to fix this. So the climate scientist, Dr. Rob Davies, joined us. He designed the syllabus for us and then joined our monthly meetings for the second half of this first year to basically talk us through things and answer our questions and help us understand. And we as a group, we're all working on different commissions and different projects from this. And so it's a very, very different way of engaging with inspirational material or creative material for a piece. The premise of this really was, as we learn these things, what do we do in our art? And how do we start to incorporate that in our work? So I went back and forth on lots of different things, lots of different ideas that could have been appropriate for this instrumentation especially, but also ideas where I felt qualified to begin to explore that material in my work. So I've saved some things that are more complex for future projects. I'm trying to figure out how I can continue to implement this source material so that I can use my work to hopefully spread a little bit more enthusiasm for action, right? I think we all have awareness at this point, but the action is what really counts. So Heat itself, I'm a disabled composer and I have a couple of different chronic illnesses that impact my life. And I was extremely moved and troubled by the experiences of disabled individuals in the rolling blackouts of the California fires, for example. Battery operated medical equipment that couldn't be charged. No one was coming to check on folks. And also the experience of disabled individuals in the Pacific Northwest heat dome that happened, where it was just all of a sudden, here's a region that has no air conditioning for the most part. And very vulnerable members of that population were lost because of that. And heat seems to be this really overarching theme and an overarching fear for this climate emergency and this climate change. Things will get hotter. And as somebody who has a heat sensitivity, I have what's called a heat intolerance. So I will start having the symptoms of something like heat stroke way earlier than somebody who doesn't have those kinds of sensitivities. So I have experienced the physical symptoms of being in unsafe, extreme heat. And one of the things that I am really invested in my work is using my own experiences with my disabled body as creative material to be able to communicate that. And so the urgency of this situation is such that it's very easy to turn away or go into kind of an avoidance cycle with all of this frankly terrifying challenge that's in front of us. And I think that nothing wakes us up to the urgency and the need for action like embodiment and empathy. When we can imagine what something feels like, we're so much better able to do something about it. And so several of the sounds in this piece are inspired by those physical sensations of being in a dangerous heat environment. So, and what it sounds like to be in that kind of heat. There's some kind of dizzy glissandi. There's a sort of a crackling tinnitus-like sound. There are sort of areas where this kind of overt syncopation, like a heart is going arrhythmic. These kinds of sounds are embedded into the motivic materials of the piece. And then the piece tells kind of a story in a way of experiencing this kind of almost arid, desert-like wind, where the wind is so hot it is not a relief. And then the fear of that situation, knowing that this is and can be and our sort of reality or our future reality. And then a depression, which sort of mirrors my own journey in learning about all of this. And this sort of trying to portray musically a sense of giving up. And what does that sound like when it feels like you have to just kind of detach in order to gain the sort of energy to rejoin the fight and keep going. So as the piece continues, I would say that it mostly is characterized by these little fragmented calls to action. And it's almost like members of the orchestra are each waking up from the depression and trying to take some sort of motion forward. The clarinets at one point get a little sarcastic, like, why bother? And as these sort of the enthusiasm kind of builds, we get some more of these horn calls sort of spread throughout the parts, but they're the wrong instruments for the horn call and it's in the wrong key. So we get the sense that there's action, everybody's trying to sort of do something, but it's not united, it's not unified. It's kind of a false start. And at that point, there's this kind of breath where there's very low, chill string pad in a way, and the vibraphone kind of bows its very sort of meditative tone. And where that originally had been kind of a depression or a giving up, in this new context, it becomes the deep breath. It's like, there's the meditation. We can do this together. And at that point, things start moving towards a more unified whole. There's a build of momentum. The strings have this sort of trilling texture that just steps up very, very slowly and eventually arrives in this, what I like to think of as a resolved full ensemble sound. So we see those horn calls really come to fruition. All the harmonies finally match, where before there had been this kind of disjointedness. But there's still that sense of this is serious. This isn't a triumph. This is effort that we know we need to undertake. If I had to put some sort of button on where I hope the piece ends up and what I hope the piece evokes, it's that we need to wake up, and every one of us needs to work together.
What an amazing description of your piece, Jessica. That was beautiful and
Thank
so
you.
articulate. As I'm learning it now, the concert is about 3 weeks away. This is going to be very helpful for me. Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm worried about the notes and the entrances and the dynamics, but you're zooming out a little bit and giving me a wonderful sort of psychological portrait of what's going on in your piece. And I know that our listeners, from hearing your description, are going to be flocking to the concert hall. at the end of February.
Excellent. Yes,
to
please come to the concert.
Please come to the concert. You can, of course, visit our website, thesfco.org. And Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your time and your explanations, and of course, your talents in heat. I'm really looking forward to working with this piece with the orchestra in a couple of weeks, and then 3 performances over the last weekend in February.
Thank you, Ben.
Take care of yourself, stay well,
Thanks,
and
you
we'll
too.
talk soon. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you, Jessica.
Bye.
A shout out to the Medallia Company for their generous sponsorship of the San Francisco Chamber Orchestra this season.